Belanda merupakan salah satu negara di dunia dengan sistem transportasi modern yang telah terkoneksi. Bepergian dari satu titik ke titik lainnya di Belanda bukan merupakan hal yang rumit. Tentu saja pencapaian ini bukan pekerjaan semalam. Butuh waktu yang lama untuk membangun sistem transportasi di Belanda. Sistem serupa juga pernah diterapkan di Indonesia. Salah satunya adalah sistem tram. Pengoperasian sistem tram pertama di Indonesia dilakukan oleh perusahaan swasta dari Belanda bernama OJS di kota Surabaya pada tahun 1889. Nah, ternyata menarik kan sejarah transportasi Belanda dan Indonesia? Kali ini kita akan mengunjungi Museum HOVM atau Museum Transportasi Publik yang berada di kota Den Haag. Di museum ini terdapat tram yang pernah beroperasi di kota Surabaya loh. Yuk, kita gali lebih dalam bersama Leo Haring, seorang konsultan senior perkereta-apian di Belanda mengenai sejarah tram di Belanda, perkembangannya, dan kaitannya dengan Indonesia.
Actually, there are more systems than this tram system in the area. We have a metro system, we have buses and everything. But in particular, the Randstad rail system, that is an integrated system, not only consisting of a light rail line, but also a metro line. Because what was done in the early 90s of the last century, that was to improve the public transport in the region between Rotterdam and The Hague. It was necessary to change the network. We had in the past two regional railway lines, The Hague to satellite city Zoetermeer and The Hague to Rotterdam Central Station. But these regional lines were not coupled with the tram system in The Hague and the metro in Rotterdam. And in order to provide more direct connections, that means that it's not necessary to transfer at Central Station, but you can continue your ride to whatever hospital or whatever in the city. They started to make a plan to convert the regional railway lines, the Zoetermeer line and the Hofplein line to Rotterdam, and connect these lines with the tram/metro system. So now it's not necessary anymore that people from Zoetermeer need to transfer at Central Station if they want to go to, let's say, one of the shops in the main shopping street. They can continue. And that might be also for cities like Surabaya a good opportunity, because the situation now in Surabaya is that the electric tram line will stop at Wonokromo, but maybe many people want to go to Juanda Airport. What you can see in America, that in many new systems they also make a connection with the airport. So it's not only for the city and maybe the suburbs, but also to connect it with the airport. And the advantage is, particularly in Surabaya, is that you can go from Wonokromo to Perak, but you can also go to the west and the east if you make one system. That was the major development here in the area, the coupling of the metro of Rotterdam with The Hague, and the coupling of the Zoetermeer line with The Hague, in not only Central Station but many other areas in the city. Actually, we have one integrated light rail or /metro system. That doesn't mean that we can use this tram to go to the city center of Rotterdam. Of course, technology has changed and we have now other vehicles, but we also have vehicles that can be used on that Zoetermeer line. You can use it in our tram tunnel, and you can use it on the street. So in one line you have different infrastructures. Here you have tunnel, there we have fire duct, and there we have street running. And that of course makes it very, very flexible, and also for the future it will give the possibility using the same technology to make other connections than the current existing connections. So that is actually the main development that occurred. That is a very nice, very good question, because it was not only the city government, of not only the provincial government, but also the transport companies. They participated in this planning. For Randstad Rail, a plan was made by together the Dutch railways, the HTM tram railway company, the RET, Rotterdam Metro System, and the major regional bus system. So these four operators, they said, well, we need to do something to improve the transportation in the area. That means Dutch railways accepted the loss, so to say, of their regional lines. There are no trains running anymore, a metro and a tram, not trains. And that might be something that in some areas in Indonesia can be done as well. And particularly in Surabaya, you had OJS, that was Ooster Java Stoomtram maatschappij. That was started in 1889 with steam trams to Mojokerto, to all other places. So it has a regional function, but it has also a function in the city of Surabaya. You had via Diponegoro, there was a steam tram running until 1970 something. In 1923, OJS started the electric tram system with this kind of vehicles, but then adapted to Indonesian conditions. That was finished in 1968, but the steam tram was running maybe another 9 or 10 years more. So it was very funny that the steam tram survived and the electric tram unfortunately did not survive. The HTM has approximately 200 vehicles. That is 72 Evenios. They were delivered 5-6 years ago, built by Siemens. Then for the Randstad rail we have Regio Citadis, that is that regional tram that is now running to Zoetermeer. That was a design originally made for Kassel in Germany. The city of Kassel has a huge regional rail network and the tram system, but it's now connected. And that means that the vehicles not only need to comply with the regulations for the tram, like all other trams here in The Hague as well, but also comply with the heavy railway regulations. Otherwise they're not able to be used together with trains on the same track. The main reason is the capacity. A tram is flexible with regard to capacity because you can couple the vehicles to make the combinations longer, as long as you want. For example, in Utrecht we had two very heavy bus lines operated with double articulated 24-meter buses, but it was not enough. The frequency was too high, it was unreliable, irregular, and that's the reason that they made a new connection by rail, tram, between the central station Utrecht and the university in the east. And there they operate 60-meter tram trains and even 75-meter tram trains, so much longer. So they could, by doing that, increase the capacity dramatically. That is maybe a very clear situation where it was necessary, but also in other situations it's necessary to introduce, to operate with trams. For example, if you have a network with many bus lines, you can see what happened in rush hour in the cities. There are too many buses, it's pollution, all things like that. And that is, of course, you can also introduce electric buses, but the capacity is still a major issue. How many passengers do you want to carry with your system? And if you create a system that is not for the next 10 years, no, it's for 50 years. And that is also a very important issue. For the Zoetermeer The Hague connection, approximately 80,000 each day, and for the other, something like 40,000 to Rotterdam. A tram is not a train. Why? The tram needs a very strong brake because you're running in traffic with bicycles and cars. The tram can run through 20-25 meter curves because they should be able to use them in the street, and the streets have very narrow curves. The axle load, lower. In the wheels we have rubber elements to reduce vibrations, to reduce the noise, that's the vehicle, but also the infrastructure is different. Different wheel profiles, different constructions of switches, and the switches are set by the driver or by a system on board the vehicle that automatically puts the vessel heated in Indonesia. in the right position. In particular for the wheel and the rail, they make contact. That means that there is wear. In particular in the sharp curve, the head of the rail, that's the surface on which the tram is running, the wear of this rail after some kilometers is higher than normally in the heavy railway system because they have wider curves. And so that is an important issue for maintenance because you need to keep the wheel and the rail in some dimensions to avoid derailing. Because if you have too much rail wear or you have too much rail wear, then there is a possibility of derailing. So that maintenance is actually check, and recheck. Yeah, often that depends on the stretch, of course. There are, for example, long lines with wider curves. That is there the problems are much lower. But for example, in the city with the narrow curves, then and maybe frequent service, then yeah, it's necessary. Normally in the past we had, I don't know how it is today, but we had a check once a year. That we always check, of course, because if the driver sees something on the rail or whatever, he should make contact with the control center. But once a year we had a check with the head of the department and his staff and running, walking like that. But now we have all very modern devices. We have vehicles that can be used to check the rail automatically. The major requirements are about the safety in the street, of course. So the brake distance should be under certain limits and a certain maximum. So that is a very important requirement. But of course, all other things like noise, vibrations, and of course, electric vehicles. So you need to comply with regulations regarding this equipment, regarding the fact that you are running an electric system with high voltage. Here in the Netherlands, we had not many electric tram systems. In particular, after the war, only 3 systems survived. The regulations here were not so very detailed. And why? Because these companies, huge expertise. Of course, you always need some sort of regulations, but not so very detailed. All these people who are responsible for this kind of system, they exactly know what to do. And also important, and that is not so in Indonesia, we were all member of UITP, that's the Public Transport Association worldwide, mainly European countries, but also connections with USA and some other parts of the world. And what is important that to have this kind of contact with each other, to communicate about your experience with your systems. We do know some of these countries or companies, they have the same suppliers, and also that is very nice to have discussions with other companies about the quality of the supplier, the reliability of the supplier, all that kind of things. It's a pity that the Indonesian cities are not member of UITP, because you can learn a lot of each other. And that is what we always say, well, please be member. And I myself was 20 years in the Light Rail Committee of UITP, and still today, many German friends, English friends, and okay, we not talk too much about trams anymore because most of them are retired, but it's still very nice that in case you need something, if you want to know, there's always a telephone number, somebody behind the telephone at the other side to share your experience. If you look at what is happening now in Indonesia, you have the main railway, PT Kereta Api, but you also have now the LRT1 in Jakarta, you have Palembang, you have 2 other lines. That there is no standardization. You have 4 new systems and no standardization. Palembang, 1067 millimeter track. The lines to Bogor and 1435. So that's also already a very large difference. You cannot use a Palembang vehicle Huh? And that is what is possible here. We introduced here for the Randstad Rail that castle vehicle because we have the 1435, we have the same voltage. Of course we need to adapt, but we know the people there, and that's one of the reasons that the vehicle was selected, because there was already much experience. I hope that in the future they will be member of this large family as well.